Am I the arsehole for not wanting a relationship with my parents now that they've cut me off? Story time. So my parents do pretty well, and when I was going through the student finance system, I found out that I could only get the lowest amount because of how much money they earn, which is just over £3,000 a year. I just find it so bizarre that there's this assumption that your parents will just help you out. Like, some people don't get that. I'm on a high intensity course, right? And I wasn't too sure how I was going to juggle schooling, working, studying. So when I found out about how much money I was entitled to, I told my parents that I would rather take the next year off and save up and go to my first choice school, or go to my second choice school now. I just would not be able to afford to live in the city that my first choice was in. So where is my parents said that they would pay for my rent if I went to my first choice school on schedule, aka this year, which I was like, brilliant, works for the both of us. So they set me up in this gorgeous studio apartment in the city. So all I would have to do now is get a little part-time job to cover the cost of food and bills. Then 2 months ago, they called me and told me that they thought I was relying on them too much. They said that they felt it was about time that I find out what the real world was like and that I find my own way. They said that they were going to cover me till the end of the month, and then after that, I was on my own. They said that they were still my parents and that they loved me and they hoped that we could stay in touch as much as possible. So now I had 11 days notice of when my rent would be stopped being paid, my phone bill would stop being paid. I went to my uni and begged them to help me with some emergency housing, but they said I had no proof that my parents had actually cut me off. So I emailed my parents asking if they could write an email to the school to tell them that they had actually cut me off financially. They said no. I asked work if I could pick up more shifts to help pay, but they said due to my contract they couldn't give me anything. So I am now sleeping on my best friend's sofa and I'm looking for a second job. I hadn't heard anything from them in a little while actually, and then on Facebook I got a message from my dad saying that they were both really disappointed that I hadn't called for my mum's birthday. Oh, are you disappointed? So am I. So I just gave it to them straight. I was like, listen, you've done me so dirty. I can't have a relationship with people that disrespect me and leave me in the position that you have left me in. I'm getting a bunch of messages from them. My brother's even got involved and asking if I could reconsider my decision. And my friend is saying that I shouldn't feel bad, but I feel so bloody guilty. So what do you think? Am I in the wrong here?
Am I the asshole for cutting off my stepmom for wearing white to my wedding? Stepmom has always wanted me to think of her as my bestie. She's like a cool mom, you know? When my parents got divorced, it was pretty amicable. There was very little drama, and I appreciated that because my parents didn't want me to grow up in an environment where I had to choose between them. My mom remarried, and I love my stepdad. He's like a second dad to me. He also has a lot of money, so he pays for everything. Father and my stepdad actually get along really, really well. They both paid for my wedding. 30 years old, and I got married to my best friend. Planning of our wedding was seamless because I had a great wedding planner, and like I said, my husband's parents and my parents paid for everything. We had a healthy budget for the wedding. My stepmom early on wanted to get involved, and she was trying to pick out really expensive things for the wedding. For the wedding, we actually didn't want to spend more than around $30,000. We wanted to spend more money on traveling for our honeymoon, but my stepmom started inviting herself to every single meeting I had with the wedding planner. My husband was very involved, so him and I basically chose everything together. Whenever my mom would come, she would try to come too. This is when she started trying to pick out the most expensive flowers, the most expensive cake, and flavors that we didn't even like, and then she would insist on us picking those things. Every single time she did something, I would complain to my mom. My mom would just subtly let her know that we weren't going to choose those things, that we were trying to stay within a small budget. That's when she started complaining that we should have a bigger budget. That seeing as how all of the parents were pitching in, our budget should be around $100,000. When she said this to me and my husband, we both looked at each other and laughed. We explained to her that instead of having a huge, ginormous wedding, we wanted to prioritize our honeymoon. We had planned to go island hopping in Greece and spend time in the south of France. And of course, we would prefer to stay in beautiful, luxurious hotels. But she said that we were being selfish, that we were going to deprive our families of the wedding that we all deserved, and that the wedding experience should be magical and huge, and that no expense should be spared. Couldn't believe that she was saying those things. She sounded so stupid. I walked straight to my dad and I explained to him that he needed to control her and ask her to please stay away. Dad told me that he couldn't do that because if he did, she would get upset. Every single time family is involved in any situation in any of these story times, someone's always going to get their feelings hurt, and that's why people don't speak up. Once my dad insisted on not telling her, I had to do it myself. I told her for the rest of the wedding planning, my husband and I would take care of everything. This is when she starts to cry. Dad finally opened his mouth and explained to her that it was just best for everyone. Then she tried to guilt trip me. She told me that her and I had been best friends for decades, which is so not true. She said she likes for me to think of her as my best friend. She's not my bestie. She stormed off, and then my dad made me go apologize to her, which I did. And this is the thing I regret the most. What she did next is so unbelievably rude. made her feel like she could do whatever she wanted. The good thing is she did stay out of the wedding planning, but the bad thing is that she actually succeeded in making me feel guilty. Even went as far as to tell my dad that I had never heard her this way before. For the rest of the wedding planning, whenever she knew that we were going to go meet with the planner, she would just mope around my dad's house and ask me what we decided on afterwards. Because I'm so nice, I actually decided to tell her what we were choosing, but of course, every single time I showed her something, she would start to criticize. At this point, my husband put his foot down and forbade me from showing her anything, because he would see how I would react every time she told me something. Finally, the day of the wedding arrives. We landed on a beautiful cake. The venue was small, but it was so beautiful, and we had every single thing we ever wanted. The entire family came over to get ready with me. This is where all the drama started. I had one bridesmaid who wore lavender, and my mother who wore lavender as well. I told my stepmom that I would prefer her to wear lavender since she is my stepmom, but I told her she could pretty much wear any color she wanted. For the end of us getting ready, I noticed someone in white out of the corner of my eye. I was getting the final touches on my makeup, so I really couldn't open my eyes. I initially thought it was like somebody from the service. Then that's when I hear my mom gasp. I quickly open my eyes and see my stepmom standing in front of me, dressed in a full white gown. It didn't look like a wedding dress, but it was a gown. I guess to be more specific, it was cream colored. My dress was white, but with a hint of lavender. I couldn't help it and I asked her, "Why are you wearing white?" She then looked around to the entire wedding party and said, "You told me I could wear whatever color I wanted." My mom could not help herself. I told her that everyone knows wearing white to a wedding is inappropriate. My stepmom told me that we were just reading too much into it, but I was clearly upset. I told my dad he had no idea that she was wearing white, so she obviously didn't tell him because he would have told her not to. Thankfully, the wedding was fun and everything went off without a hitch, but after the wedding, I completely cut her off. I sent her a message telling her that she crossed several lines and that there was no way I could have her in my life after this. My mom and even my dad agreed with this, and my dad basically told her that she needed to stand down. She's been texting me and calling me nonstop, and I just blocked her. Am I overreacting? Wedding pictures look great, except for the fact that my stepmom is in a white dress. My husband wants me to just get over it because it's family drama, but I think I should stand my ground. Self-care sister out.
I prepare to meet the son that I gave up for adoption for the very first time. I'm so incredibly nervous because this is huge. I never thought I would actually be able to meet him. When my son Jameson was about 1 year old, I got pregnant. And this is when I was still on drugs and things were bad. I had lost custody of Jameson and my life was in shambles. And you're probably gonna hate me for what I'm about to say next, but if it helps even one girl out there, then it's worth it. I could not stop using drugs. I tried so hard. I even went to the dope man and I told him, "Listen, I'm pregnant. I can't stop using. Please stop selling me drugs." Dope man was like, "Yeah, I got you, babe, I got you." And I would get a little bit of money and I would need something so bad. I'd be sick, withdrawing, and I'd go back to him and I'd say, "Please sell me something." And he would say, "All right, baby girl, I got you. And like it wasn't his responsibility. I went to detox, I went to treatment. I was so scared for this child. And I hated myself because I was like, what the hell kind of mother does this? I didn't understand about the power of addiction at that time, and I just thought I was a horrible person, as many of you may consider me now. I finally came into the world. I've been using drugs for so long that something in my heart had just turned to ice, and when he was born, I didn't feel those motherly feelings that you have for your kid. I didn't have that. My heart was like a block of ice. For some reason, I didn't get arrested, although they did post a police officer right outside my door. I was so convinced that I'd be going to jail because when he was born, there were drugs in my system and his. Remember, a CPS worker came and she said, "Do you have a crib?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Do you have a car seat?" And I said, "No." She said, "Do you have baby food and formula and all the things that a baby would need?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Honey, you know you're not going to be able to take this baby home with you." And I said, "Yeah." When it came time to go, they let me leave, but they had to keep him. Arrangements were made for a cousin of mine to come and get him. And y'all, she dropped everything in her life and went to Walmart and bought everything you would need for a child. And she became his caregiver from the moment I asked her to. About 3 or 4 days later, I was back in the hospital because my boyfriend at the time had some kind of cyst or something and he needed to go have it lanced. And we were in the ER and we were waiting, and it took forever. And I had the idea, I have a child upstairs, I'm gonna go see him. I got into the elevator and I remember pressing the button to go to like the baby floor, and like the elevator is kind of shiny and I could see my reflection. Hang on. I could see my reflection in the elevator, and I just looked at myself and I didn't recognize myself. I was in a really violent relationship, and my hair was just falling out in chunks, and I had a broken, bruised jaw or something. I had bruises and dirty fingernails, and I had on this giant plaid, kind of like a shacket thing, and old dirty jeans that were all wet and dirty on the ends. And I remember having the thought, like, who is this? And I went to where they keep the babies, and you know how you look through the glass and you can see them all lined up kind of facing the glass, and I looked over there and I was trying to find my baby, and I found his name, and he was swaddled up tight and sleeping so well. And I don't know what made me do this to this day. I believe it was my first experience with God, because I didn't feel feelings. I didn't have any feelings. I was cold, and yet for some reason I went to the nurse's station and I knocked on the door, and this super sweet nurse came out and she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am. Do you remember me?" And she said, "Of course I remember you." And I said, "Is there any way I could see the baby?" And her face kind of fell, and she said, "Of course you can see the baby." And she took him and pushed him into this little room off to the side of the nursery. She cracked the door and she told me, "You just take as much time as you need." And it was in that moment that all that ice that was frozen around my heart, it cracked open. I looked down at his little face, and he was sleeping, and I started crying. These hot, silent tears, they just fell down my face, because I knew that this wasn't me. I knew that I wasn't the type of person to do this, and I started telling him and apologizing to him and telling him, I'm so sorry that this has happened. And he started to wake up, and so I was like, I don't want to cause him any more discomfort than I already have. So I took off. I told the nurse, and I was like, I'm gonna go. He ended up getting adopted by this sweet family at my grandma's church. I never saw him again. You guys know my story. You know, I ended up going to prison for armed robbery. It was in prison that my life turned around. I found Jesus, and I started just pursuing a relationship with him with all my heart. And when I got out of prison, things went really well. I was able to regain custody of my first son, Jameson, when he was 7 years old, got a job, went back to school, just did all the things. But I prayed for that baby boy every single day. I prayed for him, and I was able to see that he was doing well. He went to a church that wasn't too far away from like where I lived, and every once in a while in a small town, I would see him like at Walmart with his mom, and I knew he was good, and I knew that it was none of my business to try to introduce myself or interfere in any way. I will tell this story. When me and my son were at the Relay for Life one year, when Jameson was probably like 8 or 9, and he was there with his family in his church, and I remember just grabbing Jameson's hand. We were in line for some french fries, and I grabbed his hand and I was like, "There's your brother." And Jameson kind of freezes and he looks, and we're both just staring at this kid like creepers. And all of a sudden this music comes over the loudspeakers, and my son, he starts dancing, and he's like doing a little jig, and he's moving and dancing and smiling and laughing. And it was just like it was in slow-mo for me, because I just felt the Holy Spirit say, "See, he's okay. He's dancing." And I had peace. Fast forward to right before the Taylor Swift concert, me and Jameson were celebrating the day that he came back to live with me, and we were going to see Taylor Swift in Atlanta. And we were both so excited. It was on a Thursday night that we were getting ready for the next day, and he needed some things for his outfit. I needed some things. We went to this one Walmart, and because there's 2 Walmarts in my town, went to this one Walmart. The stuff that we wanted wasn't there, so we came home. And we were just like, he got a bite to eat, and I was like packing some things, and we were like, well, we still need these last 2 things, so we have to go to Walmart. So at 10 o'clock at night, it's pouring down rain. We make our way to the other Walmart across town, and I'm in like the women's clothing section, and he went to go look at like the makeup, and he came back to me, and as he was walking over to me, this little girl comes after Jameson, and she's like, excuse me, what's your name?" And Jameson was like, "Jameson?" like, do I know you? And when I say little girl, she was like 18. And then she goes, no, but you look like him. And she turns and she points behind her, and there is standing my son that I gave up for adoption. And she goes, that's your brother. And y'all, my heart stopped beating. I couldn't breathe. I was so speechless. Like, I can't even describe it. I had no words at all. And Jameson looks at me and he's like, holy, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so my son, who I gave up for adoption, he comes walking over towards us, and I was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening, or something inane. And I said, can I hug you? And he said, yeah. And I hugged him, and he held on. And I pulled back, and we were talking. I mean, I don't even know what we were saying because I was just so flabbergasted. And I said, so you were born October 25th, so that makes you're 18 now. And he just kind of looked at me like, how do you know my birthday? He said he had just found out from his parents who I was. He had done some investigating, and I guess they had looked at my Facebook or my son's Facebook, and they knew like who he was and who I was. That girl was his girlfriend. Her name's Bella, and she's a doll babe, and I'm so grateful for her just having the audacity to come running after us in Walmart. I love you, Bella. He was graduating from high school, and they had a lot going on, but he said he wanted to get to know me if I was open to it, which of course I'm open to it. We took a picture and we exchanged numbers. And when they walked away, I turned around and I walked towards like the women's lingerie. And as soon as I was blocked away from them, I just broke down sobbing. And my son Jameson, he's like 6'1", and he just kind of held over me and just protected me and like just let me sob. And he just knew like what a big deal it was. It was a few months before we were able to actually set down a time to meet, but we kept running into each other at these odd times. Like, I sent him a text and I told him basically, the ball is in your court. I'm completely open, like completely respect whatever you want to do. If you don't want to have anything to do with me, if you want to get together and cuss me out, like whatever you need to do, I'm here for you, and I'm down for it, like whatever it is. And I saw that he had seen the text that said read, but he didn't reply. Ended up seeing him again in Walgreens, and we got to know each other a little bit because he was telling me that he's like an artist. And I said, well, you didn't get that from me. And he laughed because, it was the first time he could hear something like that because he was adopted. So finally we were able to meet again, and he texted me and he said, I'd really like to get to know you. Is there any time that you can meet and talk?
I carried my own poop in my bag for nearly 10 miles. And I, 23 female, was 18. I had a summer job working as a cashier at a large supermarket. I spent most of my nights at my boyfriend's parents' home in a smaller town about a 20-minute drive away. And one morning, he wanted to wake and bake, and he didn't have work until the evening. And as I didn't have work until just after midday, I thought, fuck it. I'm going to do what Chris did and take a hit in the studio. So we hit the bong and then went to the kitchen to have a full English breakfast. He says that. As I was finishing off my baked beans, I saw the time and realized I had just over 10 minutes to get the bus home and in time for work. So I ran to get my things and quickly used the bathroom. Turns out I needed the biggest shit of my life, which was refusing to flush down his tiny ass toilet. I was running out of time till my bus and I had to think fast. My first thought was to wrap it in a toilet roll, which was a huge fail as it just absorbed the water and stuck to the poo. Yes, I had to pick it up with my hands. I was planning to wrap it up and put it in the bin next to the toilet, but I immediately realized how disgusting that would have been. Next, I thought I should throw it out the window, but what if it lands in the gutter? His bedroom is in the attic. Or even if it didn't, someone in his family would just go out there and just find a human poo on the garden floor. I was really starting to panic at this point, as I was so close to missing the bus, which would have meant being late for work. I was high as fuck, so I was freaking out even more than I usually would.
Oh my god.
And I couldn't think of any way out of the situation. When I checked my phone, I had no time left, so I grabbed a t-shirt out of my bag, one of my favorites, RIP, wrapped it around the giant shit and with wet toilet paper stuck to it, and ran downstairs to find my boyfriend waiting to say goodbye. He was probably wondering what was taking me so long. There was no way way I'd be giving him a hug and a kiss with a whole poop in my bag, so I ran out the door shouting how I was going to miss my bus and reached the bus stop, which was fortunately right outside his house. Now, it was a sunny, hot day in July. I had a fat shit in my bag, and I was stood at the bus stop baked as a cake, freaking out about how everyone on the bus is going to think I smell of shit.
Yeah.
And how it's just going to cook in my bag because it was already so hot, and the little bus will be like an oven. But there was no way to discard my poop while I waited for the bus, and I barely had a minute till it arrived, so I couldn't just chuck a t-shirt full of poop outside my boyfriend's parents' home. And even if I did, my boyfriend would have known it was my t-shirt, and God forbid pick it up thinking I dropped it by accident, ... So I get on the hot, sweaty bus, high, paranoid, and certain everyone could smell the shit in my bag. And now I'm wondering how I'm going to talk to my mom when I get home when I'm super blazed and smell like shit. I get home and run straight upstairs and shout down that I'm going to be late for work. I jump in the shower, put on my uniform, and I'm immediately out the door, barely speaking to my mom. The supermarket I work at is about a 30-minute uphill walk from my house. I'm still high, it's really hot outside, and as I'm 10 minutes into the walk, I realize I still have a fucking shit in my handbag. My own fucking shit in my fucking handbag. I was so determined to avoid my mom and get to work, my high ass didn't even think to take it out and dispose of it in my mom's toilet. And now I'm nearly at Tesco and I still have poop in my bag. Unfortunately, the closest bin was right outside my work, so I put my whole bag in the bin and go to the staff room like nothing happened. I then spent the rest of the day scanning customers' groceries, traumatized about what I'd been up to, and I've had to live with this information all my life and have been too embarrassed to tell anyone. I guess I could have just told my boyfriend I couldn't flush and didn't have time to wait for it, but we were still fresh in our relationship and I couldn't stand the thought of him getting rid of my giant shit while I'm not even there. Feels good to get that off my chest. Sorry for the long read.
Title of this is, Am I the Astronaut for Wanting to Divorce My Husband Because He Wants a Son? I, 27 female, have been with my husband, 29 male, for 5 years, married for 3 of those years. Our marriage was perfect and we were so happy. It felt like our entire life was perfect. Church on Sunday, loving husband, beautiful home, all of it. A few months into our marriage, I became pregnant, and my husband and I were overjoyed, and so was the rest of our family. My husband was especially happy after finding out our baby was a boy, as he'd always told me he wanted at least one son. I even started to try to attempt to repair my relationship with my mother so our son could have a relationship with his grandparents. I had originally cut off most contact with my mother due to how she treated my brother when he married his husband. Though my brother said he was all right with my decision to get her back in my life since he still has love for her and my baby was her first grandchild. However, our son ended up stillborn and it broke me. I fell into a depression and at one point even considered doing the worst, but my husband was there for me during all of it and we got through the grief. Our marriage felt stronger than ever and life started slowly feeling beautiful again, even if it no longer felt perfect. About 5 months ago, I found out I'm pregnant again, and then found soon after we're having triplets. My husband and I were over the moon, and he was the most doting and loving husband. Since we have always said that we wanted 2 to 3 children, we agreed that we wouldn't try for any more children after this. Because of our and our family's excitement for the triplets, we decided to throw a baby shower and gender reveal party. We trusted my brother with the genders of the triplets, and he bought some confetti cannons with the colored streamers inside. The baby shower went wonderfully with my parents, in-laws, my brother and his husband and their daughter, and tons of friends and extended family. It was like a dream come true, and I was so excited for the gender reveal. I don't care what the gender of our babies was, I just wanted healthy little babies. But my husband was clearly excited for potentially 3 sons. When the time came, me, my husband, and my brother all shot a confetti cannon, and all 3 shot out pink confetti. I was so excited, and so was my brother, but my husband screamed at the top of his lungs and hit the table in front of us, hitting it so hard that he actually broke it. He screamed at me that I was supposed to give him at least 1 son because I killed his first son. That's when I burst into tears. I had been so broken up about our son's stillbirth, and a part of me had felt like it was my fault, and now he, my husband, was the love of my life, telling me that it was. My brother immediately stepped in and tried to get my husband to calm down, but my husband shoved my brother, so my brother instead pulled me inside where I cried in the living room while my husband's mother tried to calm him down. I could hear him screaming outside about how 3 daughters is too many, how he doesn't want 4 kids, but he also wants a son. Ever since that moment, my husband has hardly talked to me. He's been sleeping in the guest room, and when we do interact, he's clearly upset and mad and tries to argue with me. I tried to talk to him about it and asked how he'll be with our 3 daughters, but he spat at me and told me he will provide them shelter and food, but he isn't interested in daughters and doesn't plan to have a close relationship with them. That sealed the deal that I want to divorce him, and I cried myself to sleep last night. Earlier today, I confided in my mother and mother-in-law about all of this, but they told me I can't divorce my husband just because he wants a son. Well, it's not just because of that. I don't want my daughters to grow up in an unloving household where their parents constantly argue and their father doesn't love them. The moment my husband said I killed our son, I felt as though I lost all love I had for him in an instant, and I don't want my daughters to be in that kind of household. However, both my mom and my mother-in-law say it's natural for men to want sons and that at least he isn't saying he'll mistreat them. But he did say that. They treated this as an absolute fact and acted as though I'm just a silly little girl who doesn't know anything. I felt incredibly small and stupid. I don't know what to do. My mother and mother-in-law make me feel like I'm maybe overreacting to my husband's behavior, but my brother says this is not normal as he and his husband are both men who absolutely love their daughter. I'm also not sure of what I'll do with myself if I divorce my husband. I don't work and I'm not sure I'll be able to find a job that can support me and 3 babies all on my own, or how I'll make time for all of them when I have to work. Feel so lost and helpless. I'm torn on what to do because I worry divorce will be too brash of a decision and that maybe my mother and mother-in-law are right. Am I the astronaut? What should I do? Update to Am I the astronaut for wanting to divorce my husband for wanting a son? I didn't expect to have an update so soon, but after reading everyone's comments, I decided to take action immediately and went to my brother's house. We talked for hours through the night and came up with a plan. I am going to divorce my husband. He's shown the kind of man he is, and I don't want to live in or raise daughters in that kind of environment. I'm going to move in with my brother and brother-in-law during all of this. He and his husband have a nice, large house where I can have my own room and a nursery for the triplets. I originally worried that perhaps myself and 3 babies would be overwhelming or a burden to him and my brother-in-law, but they assured me that they would love to have us there. I knew everything would be okay when my brother even offered to have a baby monitor put in their bedroom so he could help if more than one of the triplets woke up during the night. Crap, never thought about that part. What if more than one kid wakes up? And you know they will. My brother-in-law has a nice high-paying job and my brother works from home, so I will have a stable environment and my brother will help with his nieces. My own niece is excited for us all to live with her. The current plan is I will live with my brother and brother-in-law for a while, and once my babies are old enough where I feel comfortable putting them in daycare, which my brother-in-law has offered to pay for, then I can try to find a job of my own where I can save up money and eventually move into a nice place of my own with my daughters. I'm so thankful for my brother and brother-in-law. They truly feel like angels. My brother and I are also going to go no contact with my mother. My brother and I discussed her behavior with us growing up, how she treated him when he came out and also got married, and how she's treated me these past few days. We decided this was the best course of action as we've given her many chances in our lives to become more stable and kind, but she's always refused them. And we want our daughters to grow up in a loving family. When I knew my husband had left for church this morning, my brother, brother-in-law, and I went to the house and got all of my important things such as documents, clothes, and things that are special to me, as well as all the baby things. My brother-in-law's mother watched my niece while we did all of this. She's a kind woman and has offered to be a grandmother to my own babies, which I happily appreciated. I will admit that I cried. I've cried a lot lately, but mostly happy tears. Because my brother and I didn't go to church, my ladies' Bible study group texted me and asked if we were all right and if we needed anything. I texted them back and told them the truth and what happened, and they were all horrified. They told me they support me and are proud of me for taking action and are now even planning a bake sale at the church to help raise money for me and my babies. Also, apparently when my husband went out to the lunch after church with his men's Bible group, one of the other members is husbands to one of my friends in my Bible group, and when he found out what happened, he yelled at my husband so much that he cried. I got a little bit of joy out of hearing about that, not gonna lie. My pastor even called me and asked if I'm okay, and he let me know that I'll always have people who support me at my church, which I'm very grateful for. After my husband came home from church and saw that most of my stuff was gone, he blew up my phone, but my brother-in-law called him for me and said that he would pay for my husband to get therapy for his grief over our son, and also told him to leave me alone. My husband has not tried to contact me since, and he has yet to give my brother-in-law an answer for his therapy offer. All in all, I am so grateful for my brother and brother-in-law. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without them. I'm hopeful for the future, and while this isn't the kind of future I imagine for myself or my babies, this is definitely the best one I can currently give them. They say it takes a village, and my babies will definitely have a village full of love and support. Thank you and bless you to everyone who left comments for supporting me. I'm grateful for all of them. I'm glad I could give you a very speedy and happy update.